Hello, my name is Cecile, and I am the mother of Arthur. He was here this morning. I don't know if some of you saw him. So he's an adorable, almost 5-year-old. And I'm going to give you, the Emikido elevator speech. So I noticed that. This morning, one speaker talked about at what age we became what we were today, and I think for me it was on February 12, 2016, that suddenly I turned 95, and I think I'm going to stay there for a while. And so it is such a huge part of our lives that without even knowing it, I realized that I developed an elevator speech to talk about Arthur. So here we go. So Arthur developed infantile spasms when he was 4 months old. We tried about 9 different treatments. The reason why we tried so many is that initially he was developing normally, and that his cortical dysplasia only started to show when he was 9 to 10 months old. He had his left functional hemispherectomy at 18 months at Children's National in DC. And you can see him, he's almost 5, he's turning 5 next month. And today he's bilingual in French and English. He's speech delayed, but he understands both and speaks both as well. And he loves to play basketball, he is very affectionate, and he enjoys Thomas the Tank Engine. So what are our triumphs? So first of all, the reason why we did all of this, he has been seizure-free since surgery, and he is made free as last year, I think, around the same time. He walks, he runs, he speaks, he feeds himself, he gets into trouble, all good things. And the other reason why we did this surgery was we could see him disappear before our eyes with his seizures. When we switched meds, we typically had about a 2 weeks honeymoon period where we could, it was like lifting a veil, and suddenly we could see him, his personality and who he was and how fun he was. But then when the seizures returned, every time it was like putting the veil back and he would disappear. So one of our big triumphs is that he's very present cognitively. Also, he has a very profound social awareness. He recognizes and expresses his feelings, sometimes pretty strongly. But after all, he's 5, so it's expected. And he's also curious of things and ready to try new experiences. Airplane yesterday was a big excitement. Our challenges today. So I'm just going to talk about behavior and sensory issues. We have a lot more challenges, but so I'm just going to restrict this. The first one is he has very limited self-regulation. Second one is he has stereotype repetitive behavior. You might have heard him this morning squealing, and I have a video for all of you to enjoy. And the third one is that he's very easily sensory overwhelmed. So in terms of self-regulation, he has a severe attention deficit. So for example, when you talk to him, his attention is going to last about 20 to 30 seconds on a good day. He has scarce impulse control, and some days when he gets upset, all you have to do is dodge and leave the room if you don't want to get targeted by any projectile that he can find under his hand. And the last one is hyperactivity. He cannot sit for more than 1 or 2 minutes. And this is where it comes. Do you want to hear that again? Because it's he was at basketball. He goes to a basketball class on Saturday with his peers, and the lady following him is a leisure coach. So she makes sure that he's safe and that he can participate to all activities. So this was a very exciting environment. The acoustic in this room was great, so he really wanted everyone to enjoy it. And he was also, happy to be with the other kids. But it's like this all the time, and including at home. And it's from the time he wakes up in the morning to the time he goes down to sleep. And it's always a discussion we have with the teacher at the beginning of the year, is that I tell them, but they don't really realize. And then when you start squealing like this, and you have 10 or 50 kids around, who always think that is very funny. And without them knowing it, after 10 minutes, they have 10 to 15 kids doing exactly the same thing. And it can be very interesting. So he does these kind of things. He can do also, asking the same question about 500 times in a row. And some gesture also can be very repetitive. No? Okay. We've had enough. I don't know. Can you move to the other one? Thank you. So he is also very sensory overwhelmed, very easily sensory overwhelmed. For him, and it's consistent with the squealing, it's mainly auditory, so sound and noise. So when he's in a noisy environment, he's only going to be able to stand for a few minutes, maybe before it becomes too much. And this can lead to either meltdowns, or is going to participate, and his squealing is going to increase. But we also noticed that sensory-wise, is also very sensitive to touch. It can be a good thing. We can use it to help him calm down, for example. It can also be an issue when people touch him without him being aware, especially on the weak side. He can get very upset. And he's also more sensitive to heat than typical kids. To conclude, so I would like to see more research on behavior after hemispherectomy or surgery in general. One example I can give is that when my husband took Arthur for his annual with the neurosurgeon in February, I had made him a list of topics to talk about, and on the top of the list was behavior. And the reply we got from the neurosurgeon was like, oh no, kids after hemispherectomy had no behavioral issues. It's just typical toddler tantrum behavior. And when we explain it, thank you. Yeah, it didn't make me laugh, but I understand. But so, and when we describe most of what he can do, oftentimes we have the reaction from typical parents, oh yes, my daughter does the same thing. But then they come to our house for an hour and they can't leave fast enough. And it's clear that, no, it's not typical kids' behavior. And kids after brain surgery have behavioral issues. A lot of parents talk about violence, violent behaviors, or violent aggressive behaviors, and other things. And once we have this information about the type of behavioral issues that those kids have, then we can discuss what strategy we can put in place to help them. So I'm also a data freak. I do nuclear engineering, so we love our numbers. But I also realize that with our kids in this circumstance, it might not be possible to have those numbers that we like so much, and that a more qualitative approach might be completely acceptable, waiting the time we actually are able to acquire this data. One last comment that is not on this slide. parents like us are not made of glass. I think when we arrive in the office of a neurosurgeon, we've been through hell and we survived, and we are ready to consider the most extreme action for our kids. So things don't need to be sugar-coated. Just, say it. Just speed it up, and we'll sort it in, and we will sort it out. All right, thank you.